Thank you for joining me for another video. If you remember from my last video, we finished up with Genesis chapter 10, which is a super exciting chapter if you're really into, genealogies, and it was the Table of Nations, okay? And you know what, if you're not into genealogies, I forgive you if, the last three videos have been really sort of meh in your opinion. Okay, it's genealogies, they don't really appeal to everybody. So I happen to enjoy them, but there's not a lot of excitement going on in them. However, today we're going to be getting into Genesis chapter 11, and we're going to discuss a particularly famous descendant of Ham, who we mentioned in last week, or not last week, but the week before last video. That would be chapter 10, part 2. So, without any further ado, let's jump into a story, man. And this is a fun story. It's a really interesting story because, for whatever reason, out of the entirety of the Tanakh, you've got, there are 24 books in the Tanakh. You've got all sorts of, exciting stories. You have King David, exciting guy. King Saul, exciting guy. Little bit, crazy at the end of his reign, but, who wouldn't be, right, in his position? David was the same way. Solomon was the same way. King Solomon, exciting guy. Little bit crazy, but, exciting guy. Out of all of that, people really only look to 4 or 5 stories in the Tanakh and choose to focus on those. And what we're going to read today is one of those stories, the Tower of Babel incident. And it's a fun story that you have to keep in mind is encoded. Okay, it's not like, if you've ever read the book The Bible Code or any of the other derivative works from it or sequel books from it, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it's encoded, like it tells you a story, but it doesn't give you all the details. It really relies heavily on oral transmission of history to fill in the blanks. This is just kind of imagine the written Torah as headlines in a newspaper, while the oral Torah actually is what's written in the articles itself. So let's jump into this. This should be fun. So now, for real though, without further ado, let's jump into it. We are in chapter 11. We're going to begin in verse 1, and I believe we are reading 9 verses. Yes, 9 verses today. So, it opens up, verse 1, it says, وَيْهِي خَلْ هَارَتْ صَفَحَثْ وَدَوَرِيمْ حَدِيمْ. And I think that word hadim is hilarious because it means one, but it's in the plural. I think that's hilarious. So that verse means, and it was that all the earth, or all the land, or all the country, the whole country, is probably the best interpretation of that expression. It happened that the whole country, Safahath, they had one tongue, they had one language, right? They spoke, literally it means they had one lip. We're not going to talk about that. It's just it's an expression. Dvarim hadim, and literally and one words, or one's words. Whatever the plural of one is, this is it, I guess. So we have a plural of one in English, and it is ones, but it's really kind of colloquial. Like I said, I think I actually used it just a few days ago. When I was telling my son, I was like, oh yeah, it's one of these ones, and held up something to show him, to say it's one like this, but it's not this one, So that's, it's informal English, it's, I wouldn't even go so far as to call it slang. I do not believe it's proper English. So if you're learning English as a second language, you could say ones, but it's not right. It's and that's why I think this word hadim is just really kind of funny, because it is the plural of one, and you'd think that there wouldn't be. But so it tells us that the entire country at that time spoke one language, and it said that they had literally one words. And I'll get into what's meant by that, because it really is kind of strange. I guess it could be "and one things," but that doesn't help much either. Verse 2: وَيْهِ بنسقام مقادم ويمسؤ فيقع بارس شنغار بارس شنغار. Sorry, I read it with the wrong vowels there. بارس شنغار ويشفو sham. And so it tells us then that they were it happened that they came from the east. They migrated, I should say, from the east, and they found this valley in the land of Shinar, which is today it's in Iraq. So it's the land between the two rivers down toward the south of Iraq, right up against the Gulf. So we're talking. Okay, you know what? We're actually going to get into place names here in a bit. So, and it says, and they settled there. وَيُمْرُوا إِشْ الْرَغْهُ, and each man said to his neighbor, or to his friend, or his ally. It just depends on how you want to translate that. Hava, Nilbana Levanim Levanim. Okay, slightly different vowel there, which changes the word completely. As soon as I said Levanim, I was like, no, that's the wrong word. Because I know what it should mean. وَنِسْرَفَا وَنِسْرَفَا لِسْفَرَا لِسْرَفَا وَتَهِي لَهِمْ هَلِفَنَا لَآوٍ وَهَحِمَّار. Yeah, that's a hard one to say. It's got a head, a head right next to each other, and those are always hard to say. هَيَّا لَهِمْ لَحُمَّر. And so it tells us then that so they came and they said, each man to his, let's just translate it as friend. This version has, they said one to another. That's a colloquial translation, as opposed to what I'm trying to do is literally translate it as best I can. But they said to each other, so come and let's make bricks. And we will cook them, we'll burn them in fire. And the brick was stone for them, and the pit. What is this one translated as? The bitumen. Okay, bitumen. It's pitch, right? It's a goo. This is crude oil. Okay, this is it's petroleum. Okay, this is crude petroleum. It was murder for them. Selanu, Shem, and Nefus, and so it says here, it gives us their relationability. They said, come, let's build a city and a tower with its top in the sky or in the heavens, if you will, and we'll make a name for ourselves. Let's make a name for ourselves, it says, so that we're not scattered across the whole earth, or it could be across the whole land or across the whole country. Again, it just depends on who's translating it and why they're translating it that way. Wayered Hashem. Hashem descended, he came down. Lir'oth et ha'ir, to see this city, ve'et ha'migdal, and this tower, asher banu b'nei Adam, that these humans were making, that these mortals were making. B'nei Adam literally means that the children of Adam, but here it's used colloquially to mean these humans, these mortals. You'll see, by the way, the same expression, Ben Adam, all throughout the book of Ezekiel, where Ezekiel is called constantly Ben Adam. You know, he's consistently called all throughout the entire book, son of man, or son of Adam, if you will. It's the Hebrew term for a human being. It's our species name. Okay, probably, biblically speaking, holds the theological connotation of being descended either physically or spiritually from Adam, hence Ben Adam as opposed to just Adam. Ben Adam meaning son of Adam, and Adam meaning man, Adam. Okay, what verse did I just read? I read verse 5, so we're going to get into verse 6. Vayomer Hashem, Hashem said, Hen am ahad, wasafa ahath. He says, look, they've got one language, one speech. Hey, that's the right way to say it, not lip. One speech, and they're one people. Lechulam wazeh hahilam, I should say, larasoth, and no, I'll wait until I finish the thought before I translate it. Larasoth wa'ata lo yibaser mehem kol asher Yizmu larasoth. And so he says here, it says, Hashem says, look, you know, behold, they're all one people. Hen, you know, look at this, look at, you know, behold, if you will, if you want to be very biblical about your language, behold, or lo. I don't know, maybe the King James Version has lo. I don't know. I really wish that I had one open right now so that I could see. I'm not going to pull mine out though. It says that they're one people, they're one nation, right? And they have one speech for all of them. And this is what they're doing with it, he says. You know, this is what they start to do. And he says, and now, should it, yeah, I guess we'll translate it this way. Should it be held back? You know, should I hold back from letting them do everything that they want to do? You know, how does this translate that one? And now should it not be withheld from them all they propose to do? By the way, this is the Art Scroll Tanakh. It is the Stone edition. It is really good. They don't always translate things how I would like, but you know, nobody does. So, but it's a good translation. And it also has this version has English on one page and the Hebrew text on this page. So there you go. If you happen to be learning English, or learning Hebrew, or learning English for that matter, I recommend this just so that you can, compare. It'll help. Okay, it will help. This particular one is like 20 plus years old and it's falling apart, and I really do need to get a new one. So verse 7, Hava, this is Hashem speaking still, Hava, Nirda Wenavla, Sham Safatham, Asher Lo Yishmu, Ish Safath Rehu. And so, now God plays the trickster a little bit here, okay? Let's, every religion except for Judaism, no, technically Christianity has one. Islam certainly has several. Most religions have a sort of a trickster. In Christianity, it's the devil. In Islam, it's the devil, and several jinn also fulfill that duty. But in Judaism, we don't really have a trickster, so I guess God gets to be a trickster here. He says, so now, come on, let's go down and confuse their language so that they can't understand each other. Literally, it tells us that so that one man can't understand the language or the speech of his friend or his ally, whatever the case may be. So we do see a little bit of trickster Hashem here. Somebody is going to be upset with me for saying that, but that's okay. And again, this plural language referencing God alone is majestic plural. We spoke about that back when we were discussing chapter 1. Vayafetz Hashem Otham Misham al pnei chal haaretz Vayahdellu livnoth ha'ir. And so it says here that Hashem, he scattered them right across the whole face, or across the face of the whole earth, or the whole land, the whole country, you understand by this point. So he scatters them across the whole everywhere, and so they stop building this city. It's interesting that it says they stop building the city, but it never actually mentions the tower again. I just think that that's interesting. And we're in verse 9, so this is going to be the last one that we're reading today. Al-ken qurra shemah Bavel. It says, therefore, this place, it's called, its name is called Bavel. Kisham balal Hashem safat kal haaretz. Because it was there that Hashem confused or confounded the language of the whole land, the whole country, or the whole earth. Although earth in this case it doesn't work. Umisham hefisam Hashem al kal pnei haaretz. And from there, it says that Hashem scattered them over the face of the whole earth, country, land. You understand by this point. So, let's talk about it for a few minutes. I have heard a lot of different theories about this whole incident. And by the way, that's all that it says ever. In the entirety of the Tanakh, that's the only, the Tower of Babel incident, which was certainly a significant incident at the time, certainly a significant incident in the history of the region, because it did happen, and we have pretty solid evidence for it, perhaps not exactly as it's written in the Tanakh, but perhaps, well, no perhaps to it. The Tanakh is not focusing on history, it's focusing on the theology. Okay, it's focusing on what's going on behind the scenes, so to speak. And it certainly reshaped the entire area, but out of the 24 books of the Tanakh, 9 verses, that's all it gets. It's a huge event, big, important event. This is the American Revolution. This is actually, that's pretty accurate. This is the 100 Years' War. Okay, this is World War One. This is a huge event at the time that you would expect the Torah to speak about, in greater depth than this. But it doesn't. It devotes exactly 9 verses to it, and then it just sort of stops, and it's like, all right, I'm done. I'm done. We don't need to talk about their failure anymore, right? So I've heard a lot of different theories about, what happened, what was going on. I've heard them, some of them are really rather plausible. Some of them are really wild and out of this world, and I mean that very literally. Let me explain exactly what I mean. So when I lived in New Mexico, this is a decade and a half ago or so, I lived nearby the Navajo reservation. A lot of my friends were Navajos. Love the Navajo people. I make it a point to, everywhere that I go, I make it a point to get to know the locals, learn their history, and especially if, we're talking Native Americans, because I enjoy that sort of thing. I want to know their history. I want to know about them. Why? So that I know how to relate to them better. Okay. So I went there. I spoke with Navajos. Matter of fact, one of my best friends and roommate was Navajo. His grandfather and father were both medicine men, and he would one day also be a medicine man. That's what he was saying. I don't know if he still wants to do that, but it is what it is. From what I understand, that really sort of stays in the family. But it was a different guy. A Navajo guy that I had out there was a friend of mine. He taught me a lot about their history. He taught me a lot about their religious traditions. I actually picked up a lot of the language while I was out there. Now I'm not, at the point where I can communicate with anyone in it, not anymore anyway, but I used to actually be pretty good at it. Back when I lived there and could actually use it all the time. But he told me this story. He's a Christian fellow. He told me this story, this tradition that he heard that is based off of, he told me, I don't know how true this is, but he told me that it's based on a Navajo religious tradition combined with the story of the Tower of Babel. So they have kivas in the southwestern United States, which is a circular room that's below the ground level, that the Anasazi, the ancient Puebloan peoples, used to dig down into the ground, and they would build these kivas down there. And today they hold, ceremonial rituals there, religious rites, that sort of a thing. It evolved from subterranean houses, right? These were houses that were dug down. They built, houses for their families below ground, probably to escape the sun, because, let's be honest, New Mexico is a desert, at least that particular part, even though that's also right next to a river and a forest. but that region, that whole region is very dry, and it is a desert. But so he was telling me the story about how the kiva is traditional. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years, and he said that the very first kiva was when the first peoples, or first people, I should say, the first man and woman and the holy ones, the holy people, when they came up to the fourth world. Please do some research into the ancestral beliefs of the Navajo, so that you understand what I mean by fourth world here. They believe that the current world is the fourth world, and that the three previous ones, the ancestors of humanity had to climb out of, basically. It's all really quite, if you account for mythology and differences between mythology, between different cultures, it's all really quite biblical. And I think that's very interesting. But we're not talking about that. So he told me about this kiva, the original kiva, the first kiva, where the first man and woman and the holy people came up out of it into the fourth world, which is the current world. And it was once they came here that they found that this was home, right? And he said, the kiva wasn't always underground. And I'm like, okay, well, this should be good. Yeah, please tell me. I need to know. He's like, it wasn't always underground. Originally, it was in the sky. And I'm like, hold on just a second, man. You're telling me that the kiva, this ancestral kiva, this original kiva that's in the ground, was once in the sky. Oh, yeah. Okay, all right, I'm with you. So let's walk me through this, right? And so he goes, he's like, what happened was, it was a part of a spaceship. And I'm like, okay, this is where it gets great, man. It's getting good. Here we go. Let's hear this, this crazy idea, right? And he said, and he actually quoted back to me a Jewish tradition that the Tower of Babel burned on the bottom, which is true. That is a Jewish tradition. It's a tradition that relates to, what happened. The locals burned the tower, but that didn't really work. Tradition also states that God struck the top of the tower with lightning. Probably happened. I mean, that seems reasonable. So that only a third of it survives. But he didn't get into that. He just mentioned that there was fire coming out of the bottom, which is a stretch. The bottom was set fire to. There wasn't fire coming out of the bottom. And his theory is that the Tower of Babel, there's no easy way to say this, the Tower of Babel was a spaceship. They were planning to leave Earth, to fly into heaven, to fight against God. But once they got part of the way up, God knocked the spacecraft off course, and the entire thing fell to the ground, and pieces of it are scattered across the world, one of which happens to be the habitation module, which is now the original kiva that the first man and woman and holy people climbed out of into the fourth world. Okay? And I said this at the time, and I'm going to say it again. I've seen that episode of The Twilight Zone. It was a good one. I enjoyed it. And if you're laughing, I need you to understand I mean that. That is a literal episode of The Twilight Zone. Well, not the exact plot, but it's clearly related. It's in the same general... I forget what the name of it was, otherwise I'd tell you, yeah, man, go watch it, because it is good. I enjoyed it. Rod Serling, man, he could... That man, he was a Jewish guy, but he was a good presenter of stories that I enjoy that are ironically morbid and thought-provoking. Wonder what that says about me psychologically. But that is by far the wildest theory that I've ever heard about the Tower of Babel. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I think it is, but I have heard just about every theory out there. You know, from the more traditional interpretation that all the people on planet Earth at the time were there, and they all spoke one language, and then God confused their languages, and they all spoke suddenly different languages. You got, you know, this guy over here speaking Latin, or whatever the precursor to Latin was. You have this guy over here speaking Sanskrit, which coincidentally is old enough to have been there. You have, you know, this guy speaking Greek, this guy Hebrew, this guy whatever Egyptian phase was at the time. Demotic was a later form of the Egyptian language than this story, but it's not important. We're not talking languages here, okay? I get sidetracked sometimes, as you may have noticed now if you've watched more than one of my videos. So I've heard that interpretation, and that you know, to be honest with you, I like it because it's neat. But the problem is, history is never neat. The truth is never neat. Okay, it's like, you know, in warfare, you know, you're told that there's a good guy, there's a bad guy. Maybe not everyone is told that, but you know, certainly American service members are taught that. Terrorists are the bad guys, U.S. we're the good guys. You know, I'm sure back in World War II, the can't say that. The Germans were the bad guys, and they were absolutely bad guys. Obviously not all of them, but the Nazi regime they were the bad guys, whereas the Allied forces were the good guys. Okay, we're taught good and evil. You know, we like that. We like it to be neat like that. Warfare is very rarely neat like that. Okay, you'll see the bad guys doing good things for no reason other than the fact that it's the right thing to do. You'll see the good guys doing bad things because they feel like it. Okay, that's just part of the human experience. And I feel like people, when they come to certain Tower of Babel, they want to divide it into good and evil. They want to, this is what's going on, and this is, you know, they want it to be nice and neat. It's not so neat, okay? So, I mentioned before that Nimrod is attributed to being, I think it was 2 videos ago, Nimrod is attributed to being the king of this time. And you should know, according to Jewish tradition, Nimrod was not necessarily the name of an individual. However, it does appear to have been a dynastic name. In fact, there are several Jewish commentaries that have mentioned it several times. There were several Nimrods, you know, and they reigned at different times. This is a dynastic name, okay? And this really goes along with what I was saying before about how, you know, you've got the dynasty of Adam, the dynasty of Seth, the dynasty of, you know, so on and so forth. So everything in the Torah just sort of builds up as it goes. You gotta kind of know. So if you don't remember that, please go back and check it out. Okay? It is in my videos. I have mentioned it. I realize that a lot, but enjoy. The tradition is for both Christians and Jews, and I believe also for Muslims, is that Nimrod was the king at the incident of the Tower of Babel. So the Tower of Babel is in the city of Babel, right? Of Babel. Most people associate that with Babylon, but, and I'm going to try to speed things up because I kind of spent a lot of time before, and I want to make it through this so that this is not so long of a video, but most people associate Babel with Babylon. Okay, that's not quite right. In this case, Babel is from Bab Ilu, which means the gate of the gods. This is a name of the city. It's a poetic name of a city. What city, you might ask? Well, this is the city of Nun-Ki. Okay, you're going to look it up. Nun-Ki, the city of Nun. Okay, but it also had another name, perhaps an older name that we've talked about before, which is Eridu, named for Irad, right? The son of Cain, right? It's amazing how everything just sort of fits together once you start. Anyway, just go back and watch the videos if you need a refresher. So this Babel is not Babylon in Iraq. This is the original Babel that Babel was named for, if you will. Okay, this one is the city of Eridu, which is also in Iraq, but that's not important right now. It's down closer to the Gulf, right? So let's talk about what's happening in the story. So they come together and they say, let's build this city, which is not a problem. God doesn't really have a problem with people building a city. Okay, if he did, he would just be losing his mind over everything that's happening now, because there are cities everywhere, right? God doesn't care if we build cities. What he cares about is what we use those cities for. So they said, let's build a city and a tower. There's the problem. As Christian commentators and Jewish commentators, and probably Muslim commentators as well, have all agreed on, the tower was the problem. So what happened? Well, Christian and Jewish commentaries will tell you that they built this tower to wage war against God. The Torah itself doesn't make that claim, but everybody else does. You're going to find this in Midrashim, you're going to find this in commentaries, this will be in the Talmud. It's all over the place if you're looking for it, okay? On the Christian side, all you have to do is find you a good commentary, and I promise you that's what they're going to say. You can get the Apologetics Study Bible, which I own, by the way, and it also tells you that they were building this tower to wage war against God. Kind of a stupid idea, but we're talking about men at a previous time in history who they didn't realize that you can only build so high before you can't anymore. And by that I mean to say that you die once you reach a certain height because you can't breathe. But that apparently is what they were planning on doing with this tower, was waging war against God. Now the Midrash will tell you there was an idol at the top. I haven't yet seen a Christian commentary that says that. Let me explain what I think that is. I don't believe that we're talking about an idol on top of the building. Like if you've ever seen a temple for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that would be the Mormons. If you've ever seen one of their temples, you'll notice that at the top they have the angel Moroni blowing a trumpet. I'm not talking about a statue on top of a building like that, okay? That's not what I mean when I say an idol at the top of it. I think we're talking about a ziggurat. I think we're talking about a temple complex that at the top, that was the home of the god itself. And that's what the Midrash is saying when it tells us that there was an idol at the top. And there are several traditions that they were throwing spears and shooting arrows at God. That they brought the idol to life with magic, and it was doing that, and that's nonsense. Okay, that's at best that's a hyper exaggeration. But it's fantastical thinking, and that's just not, it doesn't have any basis in reality, I'll just say that. Not on a literal level, anyway. But the tower itself I think it was a ziggurat. And I think that it's pretty easy to make a connection as to who built this tower. Obviously Nimrod, according to the biblical tradition, or according to the Jewish tradition and Christian tradition, and I believe also the Muslim tradition, which all stem from the biblical tradition. But also, we know that there were other kings at the time with names similar to that, and I believe I mentioned it 2 weeks ago, that Nimrod was the king Enmerkar. I believe he was the ruler of the Uruk-dans? I can't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. But there's an interesting story about Enmerkar. So Enmerkar, who I personally identify with Nimrod, based off of the teachings of my teacher, Rabbi Michael Bar-Ron, or Michael Bar-Ron. He's Israeli. He lives in Israel, in Beth Shemesh. But he and also David Roll mention Enmerkar and Nimrod were the same guy. Okay, based off of the names. Okay, you're going based off of the names. Okay, so all the right elements are there. Wonderful, and it makes all the sense in the world, really, because we know from the from Jewish tradition that Nimrod built this temple to this foreign god, and that was the Tower of Babel. And we know that Enmerkar built a temple called Eanna, which was the house of Inanna, who was a goddess. She was a sex goddess. I personally believe that she was a deification of Eve, the wife of Adam. And she was not native to the Sumerian plain where they were. She was not native to the region of Eridu. But Enmerkar sent message to his friend in Aratta, the lord of Aratta. This is the parent population of Nimrod's people. These are the children of Noah that are still in the region of Ararat, right? And he sent word to them to bring the goddess Inanna down to Eridu so that they could worship her. Now, you need to understand at this time, Eridu they all had one deity. They worshipped only one god, and his name was Ea. Okay, this would in later times, I should say, would become Hashem. Ea is an early understanding of Hashem. They're the worship of God, the God of the Bible, in Eridu, long before there were Jews, long before Israel existed, long before Abraham existed, according to one tradition. And then you've got this king whose name, Nimrod, means let's rebel. And he rebels and brings down this goddess from the mountain region to worship there. So, one language. They all spoke one language. It says, well, is it really one language? No, it's referring to one language of prayer. They're all praying to the same deity. Where does the confusion come in? Well, the confusion comes in when they bring down Inanna, this idol. They bring it down and they start to worship it. And there's a civil war. And this is all attested to in Sumerian records as well, what records do survive. There was a civil war over it, and everybody scattered from there. Okay, so the one language, we're talking about one language for prayer. This is one religion. It's a, scripturally speaking, it is a euphemism for religion, and we can see that in Zephaniah 3 verse 9. That's what it is in Jewish versing. I'm not sure what it is in the Christian one. It's probably the same one though. If it's not the exact same one, it's, you know, a verse or two before or after. But so it's not telling us they all spoke the same, you know, they all, let's just arbitrarily say that everybody at the time spoke Hebrew in the whole world. No, that didn't happen. Not everybody in Israel speaks Hebrew today, okay? Not everybody in America speaks English today, right? This is, I mean, no, it just doesn't work that way. You're not going to get a significant population of people that all speaks the same language exclusively and just kind of, no, it just doesn't work that way. I mean, England, from the very beginning of England, always had different forms of the English language, always, you know, just represented in different geographical areas. Very interesting history there. You could study up on that if you'd like. It's not related to the Bible, though. But it is an interesting diversion. So, Nimrod / Enmerkar, he brings down this goddess after threats. You know, the Lord of Aratta, the ruler of Aratta, he didn't want to send the goddess down because, I mean, she's their goddess. Why should he send his goddess away, right? But Nimrod threatened him, and he sent down, under threat of war, under threat of death of everybody. The complex, this Eanna complex, this house of Inanna, the goddess that was brought down from Aratta, the mountain kingdom of Aratta, was never finished, which parallels the biblical account of the tower. And everybody scattered from there because civil war. Whereas in the Torah, everybody scatters from there because nobody speaks the same language anymore. There are different religions, and so there's conflict. If you've ever seen any society where there is more than one religion, you will find conflict between religions. That's just the way that it is. Unless you've got everybody that's just like, you know what, you have your God, I have my God, and you know, let's keep it that we can be friends. But you know, I won't try to convert you, you don't try to convert me. And not the whole world can be Jewish. Okay. I mean, I guess theoretically the whole world could be Jewish, but not everyone in the world would be Jewish, and that's fine. Okay, there's nothing wrong with not being Jewish. Okay, but it's when you get fundamentalists from other religions that there are issues. Missionaries are a big source of conflict, and it's not necessarily because the religion is bad or evil or wrong. It's because missionaries are showing up and they're trying to convert whoever to their faith. But, you know, these people, they have their own faith. And so that causes conflict between the two groups, and that is the whole of Western civilization summed up in like 2 sentences. There was a religion and another religion, and they fought. There it is, right there. That's the whole of Western civilization. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. No, but the same thing was going on back then, and everybody dispersed from there. Obviously, some people stayed, but, you know, people scattered because they just didn't want to be around this conflict anymore. Okay, and I'm sure there were people on both sides, you know, that were good, you know, they got along with people on the other side, but ultimately they couldn't stay together for very long because both sides were fighting with each other. It never works out. So story of the Tower of Babel is a great story. It's not talking about how all of humanity spoke a single language at any given point in history. It's not talking about you know, building this tower to go up and physically fight with God. No, this tower is a place to spiritually fight against God. It's a rebellion against God, hence the name Nimrod. Okay, this is, the story, it's not a story about a spaceship. Sorry, Johnny, if you're watching, it's not a story about a spaceship that launched from Iraq and landed in New Mexico. It's not, okay? I'm sorry. Aliens, man. That was the Twilight Zone episode. Aliens. Humans were aliens. It's, not the cookbook one. That was a good one too. We're not gonna. No. Don't get me started on the Twilight Zone. But this is a story telling us about a great apostasy. Okay, this is a story telling us that everyone worshipped the same God at that point in time. Everyone in that place worshipped the deity of the city. Everyone worshipped that deity. It just so happens I also worship that deity, according to my understanding, which is a little bit, my opinion, a little bit better than theirs, but that's not important. It's a story about how that unity was fractured by the introduction of what, from the Jewish perspective, we call it Avodah Zarah, literally foreign worship. It's idolatry. That's the name of idolatry in Hebrew. It's not, idolatry is not, in the Jewish mind anyway, it's not necessarily good or bad, it's just foreign. That's what it means to us. And so, of course, when we record this story, of course that's what we're going to focus on. The idolatry that shattered unity. This foreign worship that was brought down by the king, who imposed it as a new competing cult. Cult, in this case, not meaning anything more than just a cultural religious worship group. Not, I'm not talking about Heaven's Gate or anybody like that. Okay, we're not all going to take a trip to South America and drink Kool-Aid. Man, I tell you, the 20th century, late 20th century, it was an interesting time. What can I say? But this is a story that tells us about, ultimately, humanity's history and something that's all too familiar to us. You've got this influx of people who, they have a different god or goddess, whatever the case may be. They worship a different deity, and that causes conflict. It causes strife until there's a civil war and people go their separate ways. So, I am done. I hope that, made some sense to you. I didn't have time to write up notes about it, so I'm just kind of going off of what's in my head. And the thoughts in my head are really kind of like a shotgun blast, in that they always hit their mark, but they also hit everything around it. So I hope it made sense. I hope you're able to connect the dots with me on that. The incident of the Tower of Babel is not necessarily a story of humanity intentionally waging war against God, as much as it is about the very real history of humanity, or at least one tribe of humanity that was unified in religious thought, religious speech. They were a single people, and then they allowed foreign worship to come in and divide them. And who knows, maybe there's a lesson in there for us today, Western world. And that's all I can say about that before YouTube gets upset with me. Alright, that being said, I'm done. So until next time, shalom.